All right, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus podcast presented by Connors and Ferris. We have a very special guest joining us, Nicole Menner of Fox 11 out in Wisconsin. She's covering the Green Bay Packers. We're talking all about this Green Bay matchup against the Bills on Sunday Night Football coming up this week. This is just all about what we need to know going in and what kind of the mood is for Packers fans in Green Bay and just the team, because we know they're kind of in some interesting territory. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, the team 3-4. It's the worst record Rodgers has had through 7 games as a starter. So I know things are not going great, but just can you give us some insight? Because obviously, when the team started the season, things looked like they were going well. And then just what has happened? 3 straight losses. It's been wild to see the decline.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. Excited to talk about this one. It's funny because this was a matchup that I think everyone had circled once the schedule came out. Possible Super Bowl teaser, I guess, was what everyone kind of thought. Two
Yeah.
powerhouses. And obviously, like you said, things are very different right now for the Packers. Twitter has been freaking out. I mean, it started after back-to-back losses. Now you have 3 straight losses, and everyone on Twitter, Packers Twitter, is like, sell, sell, sell. We are in selling mode. So of course, everyone here is definitely freaking out. Locker room vibes. We were in there today, only talked to a few guys, and even yesterday after the game. I mean, you can definitely tell that they're very defeated. I think even Aaron Rodgers, and he had a quote that he's very optimistic always. I mean, he's the leader of the team. He has to set the tone. He can't say that, this is demoralizing. But I think you could kind of see a more defeated Rodgers in his post-game press conference, more so than the Jets and the Giants loss. So they're trying, I mean, they're positive. They're saying all the right things that, of course, they're going to say to the media when they're in there.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that after 3 straight losses, the panic mode is probably, if it hasn't already set in, it's there now after yesterday's loss.
So, let's go into that because we hear Rodgers talk so much about execution and even Matt LaFleur talking about, we need to do things better. What do you think is that big thing or those little mistakes that they're making that keep adding up?
Well, that's what it is. It's the little details. And that's exactly what LaFleur said today in his press conference. He said details that are bothering him so much. And it was actually, we talked to Sammy Watkins last week after the Jets loss. And I was like, what's happening on offense right now? Can you pinpoint why you guys are struggling so much? And he said something that really resonated with me. And it was just that right now we are beating ourselves. And I really think that's been the truth. I mean, the penalties yesterday, the drops, Rodgers is not playing up to his level that we're used to seeing from the back-to-back MVP. So it's all those little details. And for whatever reason, they cannot seem to shake it. And I think they're all confused about it too. Some of the things we're hearing is like, we don't know what's happening. And I kind of think LaFleur feels the same way.
That is wild to think about, though. Like, you talk about back-to-back MVP. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, how old he is, how successful he's been, and to see this team kind of free falling. Like, for you, what stands out? Like, what needs to kind of, I don't want to say change, but what are the things that you need to see? Because it just feels so bizarre. Like we talked, I mean, it looked like this was going to be a possible Super Bowl matchup and preview, and then now what it is just completely different.
Well, the thing too is it starts with the offense. Absolutely. Like they have put together such abysmal games with barely anything to lean on. And that's probably putting it nicely. But it's spiraling because like on paper that this defense, we saw all the hype that the defense was getting too, has a lot of talent. And I think it's just been like a spiral because I mean, time of possession was one thing yesterday that we've seen. The defense, they're not giving the defense a chance to kind of keep up that consistent play in the second half. So it's complimentary football. I know it's so cliche, but they're just not playing it. And it does. It just starts with the offense. It seems like everyone, and again, we never know for sure what's really happening and what's really being said, but they're just not, it seems like someone is off on something in every little facet of the offense, whether it's like a wrong route being run, someone missing a block, miscommunication, penalties. So it's those little small details that just need to get cleaned up. And I think too, we've seen them take steps backwards. Like there's been flashes of sometimes this season. I think like the first half against the Bucks, They had some very promising drives. They looked pretty good. You were like, okay, maybe this is the start of them figuring it out. And then since then, it's gone backwards. Rodgers had the whole thing about simplifying the offense a few weeks ago. But it looks like things are as simple as they could get, and it just looks like it's just the execution. It's just not coming together, and it's throwing everyone off for sure in Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild to see. And I know Aaron Rodgers, we were talking about before we started the podcast, just about what it's like covering him, how insightful he can be and how cryptic he can be. And I mean, you've seen on Twitter as well, the Aaron Rodgers soundbite after the post-game loss against the Commanders, just saying like, nobody thinks we're going to win in Buffalo. Essentially, like, it's a chance for us to get exposed. Like, is that Aaron Rodgers' smugness? What do you think that message is? Because it was quite a message.
I think it's Aaron Rodgers knowing that he has to say that as a leader of this team. Do I think he actually thinks that this game in Buffalo is the best thing for them right now? I'd be hard pressed to believe that it is. I just don't really think I buy into that. Of course, he's always talking about manifesting good energy, and you can't talk about losing next week. But at this point, like, again, it's just there's so much that has gone wrong. And I know weird things happen in the NFL. Yeah. I mean, for all we know, the Bills could play a poor game coming off the bye week. The Packers could surprise everyone and magically figure something out in the next week. But this just does not seem like the team that will be able to do that. So I see it as just Rodgers being the leader. He's the voice on the team. He has to say that, because the question was if it's plausible for them to still make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And he said, gosh darn right it is. I'll paraphrase that a little bit, but
yeah.
So, he's not going to come out and say, no, it's not. But he is realistic about the team too. I mean, he knows that they just don't have the pieces to be able to execute some of the things that they want to right now. But I don't know. I don't buy into the quote. He's going to say it. Hopefully the team can rally this week and they can put together a competitive game against the Bills, but things are looking pretty bleak.
That's the thing. It's like some of these games have not even felt competitive.
No, I mean, not at all. Like my sports director and I were talking about this today, and I was like, you know what? I think things have gotten progressively worse in each loss. And we were kind of going back and forth about whether the offense looked worse yesterday against the Commanders or if it was worse against the Jets. But it's hard to know because it's just looked so bad.
That is so weird.
I mean,
hear that, yeah.
But it's just so confusing. Like, this is just not what you expect from this team. And everyone knew that the offense would have some learning curves, growing pains without Davante. But at this point, I mean, it goes so far beyond just Davante Adams not being on the Packers.
Yeah. I guess what is the general thought of Packers fans now, as they know that their team is heading to face off against this Bills team, who we know, I mean, I've been covering the team now. This is my 7th year covering the team, which is crazy, but just, big win over the Chiefs coming off the bye. They have all the pieces. It seems like everything's trending in the right direction. I'm just curious, like, what the fan base is saying and how you think what that mood is and what that message is.
Yeah. Like I mentioned before, I've seen so many takes on Twitter about what the Packers are going to do at the trade deadline and how instead of going out and getting a receiver, maybe they need to look on selling and starting to build for the future. Is that a little abrupt to start thinking that so far? Maybe. But Packers Twitter is extremely passionate. Packer fans are extremely passionate. And I don't think I've seen any optimism about this team heading into Buffalo on Sunday. I mean, I think there was the thing too, and I think the Giants and Jets are actually much better teams than people expected them to be. That's a given. But the Commanders are not, and they had their backup quarterback out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's just even a little bit more glaring of an issue that, like, that was a game they should have won. And even though it was against the Commanders, it would have been the start of getting them back on the right track. And it just again, 3 losses. They don't lose back-to-back games under Matt LaFleur. It was the first time they did it last week. Now it's 3 straight losses. They head into Buffalo double-digit underdogs for the first time in Rodgers' career. So again, unless they magically figure something out in the next week. I don't really think anyone in Green Bay has too much optimism about going into Buffalo for a Sunday night primetime game with the Bills coming off a bye.
Yeah. What do you see? You mentioned Matt LaFleur. Like, what is that relationship like between him and Rodgers? Because I'm curious what your thoughts on it, because sometimes it doesn't exactly seem like the most, what's the word? Synergistic.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's a word, honestly, but we're just going to go with it. Like, it doesn't seem like they're always on the same page.
That's the question I think everyone has, especially when it comes down to like the play calls and you don't know who's calling it. Is it Rodgers is changing LaFleur's call? And that's something I think we'll just never know the answer to. And LaFleur, like he's gone really in depth the last 3 weeks after the losses, going into very specific plays and kind of explaining them. Like they will never outwardly make it look like they don't get along, like everyone of course will speculate about it, but they seem on the outside to have a pretty good relationship. But then you see shots of Rodgers in yesterday's game looking to the sideline saying, "What are we doing?"
Yes.
And
those were hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, they were. I mean, the camera crews were like chef's kiss getting those shots yesterday. But then those are the times where you kind of wonder, who's he frustrated at right now? Is it between the two of them? Is it between Rodgers and the players? And look, I think when you're going through a stretch like this where you are struggling so much and it seems like no one can figure out what's happening, there's probably bound to be some, not arguments, but maybe disagreements or frustration between the coach and the MVP quarterback. So it doesn't surprise me. I think that would happen everywhere.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, I think it's going to be very telling how the next few weeks go and to see kind of if they can even respond. And this is like, even if they just put together a competitive game and look like they are a football team competing even somewhat up to standard, it would be an encouraging sign.
That is what, is just so interesting to see
It's
how things have
It's
kind of
very-
fallen apart. And even like the run game, like what do you see from that? Because obviously Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, like some of these guys, just it seems like they should be way more prolific than they are, and just the struggles. What was it, 38 team yards against the Commanders?
Yeah, and like Aaron Jones too was, I think, the Packers' leading receiver against the Commanders too. So that is your most explosive playmaker on offense. He got the ball, I think, a decent amount. I think maybe in the second half they abandoned the run game a little bit, and it just feels like every week we hear from LaFleur saying like, got to get them the ball more. I know I have to do a better job of that. So that's definitely frustrating, I think. More surprising to me is almost AJ Dillon, because I feel like he has barely gotten yesterday, I forget how many carries he had, maybe 4. I forget, so I don't want to quote myself on that, but it was just, sometimes it's just surprising, especially because he was used a lot last year. And again, the Packers don't really have many receivers that can make those big explosive plays. So it's all just, and we talked to Jones and AJ Dillon even today, and AJ was like, I don't mind if I'm not getting the ball more, because I'm just, whatever it takes. You guys don't see what happens behind the scenes and all that. So that's the answer they're always going to give.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, it's definitely, that's probably been the biggest point, I think, of people's conversations about the offense this year, is just needing to feed those guys the ball.
Have things started getting pretty testy in the locker room? Because I know, when there's a losing streak going on, obviously everyone, it's heightened, it's desperate, it's all of these things. And sometimes it can be reflected in that space.
Honestly, not yet. I really have not seen that. It really does seem like the team has been sticking together. And even, this week I think will be telling, because now it's 3 straight losses and they have such a test coming up on Sunday. But honestly, the Packers have a very good locker room with a lot of leaders in there that kind of know what to say, whether or not how they truly feel. So no, honestly, I haven't noticed any contention in the locker room.
That's good.
They're not like outwardly expressing any. Of course they're frustrated, but they're not, they're not throwing in the towel, and they're not telling us that they are. So that's definitely a good thing, I guess, because at least they're putting together a united front when things can very well go the other way.
Because sometimes when you boil it down, it's like, things can change very quickly. I guess for you, what do you think, speaking of things can change, like what do you think it takes to turn this team and where they're at in the season around?
Yeah, obviously with the trade deadline coming up, you could look at that and see, if there's a wide receiver on the market they could get. And I don't think that's going to cure all of their problems by any means. I think it's just so much more than one player coming or one player like Davante Adams leaving. But they need a spark right now. Like they need something that can give them a little bit of a boost. So maybe that would help. But I also just think the biggest thing is not letting this continue to spiral, because now we've seen it spiral for 3 weeks and you just lost to the Commanders, and it's easy to let it continue to spiral, obviously, into Buffalo. So they need to just figure out a way to not let this continue to get out of control, because technically they are still in the playoff hunt.
Yeah.
And they can still turn things around. So things can be figured out. It has to be figured out very quickly. And it will just come down to, I think it really starts with the offense, just figuring out ways to not make those little mistakes, start meshing a little better, and just not letting them beat themselves.
Yeah. I'm curious, what is the talk about? Because obviously Aaron Rodgers, we know his career, what he's done, how successful he's been. I'm curious what the talk is around Josh Allen, because obviously a little bit different types of quarterbacks, but at the same point, strong arm. I mean, Allen, we've seen just kind of explode onto the scene these last couple of years. Like I remember a couple years ago being like, not enough people are talking about Josh Allen. Maybe because we live in Western New York and it's obviously a smaller market, but then to see where he's at now, I just am curious what the reaction has been from Packers fans about what he is, and even the players too, what they see.
Yeah. No, I feel like at this point, and I think you're totally right that Josh Allen, it took him a while to get the hype that he deserved. And I do feel like at this point, he's starting to get that hype. Like everyone looks at this Bills offense and they know how deadly it can be. And I'm very excited. Like the Packers secondary they're so fun to talk to. We love talking to them every week. And we'll talk to them on Wednesday for the first time, Wednesday and Thursday. And I'm very excited to see what they have to say about Josh Allen and the Bills receivers, because I think they know what's ahead. And I think just looking at all the offenses they've played this season, this is by far the best they're going to have faced up to this point. And I think the fans know that too. I think the fans, again, it goes back to them expecting this game to probably go in the Bills' favor on Sunday. Everyone knows how good Josh Allen and that offense is. So I think they know what's ahead.
I mean, you say that too, like the double-digit favorites. Like the first time Rodgers has been a double-digit underdog for Rodgers. I mean, that speaks obviously to how successful he's been, but it just does feel like uncharted territory.
It is. And even again, like with the back-to-back losses, it's a lot of the guys on this team are so not used to that happening here. And they talk so much about it's how they respond and how they deal with the adversity. So far, they haven't dealt with it very well.
Yeah.
Did I sound any more negative talking about this?
No, I mean, I think realistically though, like I think it's accurate, because if you are like us and you're in the locker room and you're talking to the players, I always feel like it's always we need to execute better. I asked Stephon Diggs this last year. I was like, what does that mean? Because you can say that about a lot. I just need to execute better. And I feel like a lot falls under that umbrella. And I don't know if it's the same for every player, but Diggs was like, for me, that means being more focused and better prepared on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday. And then that boils down to the execution on Sunday. But I think it's really interesting because it's kind of a catch-all, right? Like, oh, we need to execute better. That's just what we need
what
to
does it mean?
Yeah. But I will say it does, when there's so many little mistakes, obviously they add up and can be incredibly costly, like we've seen for this Packers team. But it just does this feels so much more different. Obviously teams struggle. Like it's the NFL. It's an even longer season now, but just where they're at and how early it is, it just feels different.
It's very different. And even like that reminded me of something else too. Multiple players, I feel like, have gone out of their ways the past few weeks to talk about how great practice has been. Like LaFleur's thing last week was, he said that they need to just have more fun. And they all talked about it last week. Rodgers said he's still having so much fun. Today, AJ Dillon was saying that he was so positive last week to the point that it was like annoying everyone. And then Aaron Jones chimed in. He was like, I can confirm it was very annoying. But yeah, so we're hearing how great practice is. We're hearing that the vibes around the team are fun. They're having fun. And then I think that makes it even more a little confusing why they're coming out on Sunday looking like they have very little energy and can't put anything together on offense, especially.
Yeah, it just looks different, feels different. I mean, the Bills were off, so I did watch the game, and I kept waiting for them to hit that second gear. Like I was like, all right, they're gonna find a way to win. Like it's Aaron Rodgers, obviously.
Well, you'd always think they could. Like you would never
Yeah.
doubt. And I found myself too in the game for the first time, I think, where I was actually like, you know what? I don't think they're going to win this game. And
Wow.
normally you would think they'd find a way to win.
Yeah.
And it just seems like at this point, that's not really the thought anymore when you look at them.
Yeah. That is how are Packers fans doing? Like
Well,
emotionally.
not well at all. And like I know we just spent so much time talking about the offense because that's the problem. But the way that this defense was hyped up, and that is my fault, that's every reporter's fault. We all talked about how great this
Well,
defense was.
no, it's not your fault because on paper they should be a lot better
They
than they
should
are.
be. And I said how, the offense doesn't really give them a chance, which is definitely true to an extent. They're on the field the defense is on the field way too much in the second half. But you also have to be able to get past that as a defense and be able to play a consistent game. So yeah, not well. Packers fans are not doing well when you put all of that together.
What is that? What is the chain out there? Culver's?
Culver's, yes.
Culver's was say. Maybe some Culver's.
There's a reason too, Wisconsin's a big drinking state. So
well, Buffalo in Western New York knows about that.
I know. I am very excited though. I will be in Buffalo for the game, and I am excited to see Bills Mafia because Packers fans are very passionate, and I know Bills fans are equally as passionate. So
yeah,
I hope I see some fans jumping on tables.
Oh, I'm sure you will. It's gonna be a fun game. It always is a fun game. I was thinking about it today. Like I was at that Packers game a couple years ago at Lambeau. Josh Allen, one of his first starts, and I think they got beat 22-0 or something. And just how different that game was to now fast forward even just a couple of seasons. So life always comes fast though in the NFL. We've learned that. Before I let you go, is there anything else that kind of comes to mind just about this matchup or where this Packers team is at, or anything that you're like, you know what, maybe we didn't talk about this, but it's just something that stands out?
I mean, I think we pretty much covered everything, but I will say I will give this team the benefit of the doubt. Like if they can come in and they find some energy this week and they come in ticked off and they play with high energy and they play angry and they can stop making the little mistakes, and like maybe there is a chance for the Packers to come out and upset the Bills. Rodgers, as I said, I don't think he was just saying this could be the best thing for them, but like maybe it is. Maybe this is what they need. They need 3 straight losses against teams that I think we all saw as the easy part of their schedule. And maybe they just need to come out with fire under their belts, and maybe they'll surprise us all. But we'll see what the vibe is, I guess, in the locker room this week and see how it goes on Sunday.
Yeah. Well, a very desperate Packers team. We will say that. Again, double-digit underdogs as they head to Buffalo. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time. Be sure to follow Nicole. What's your handle on Twitter?
Just at Nicole Menner. Very simple.
We love that. We love simple. I'm at Jenna Cottrell, so I get it totally. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have fun at the game. For Nicole Menner, I'm Jenna Cottrell. Thank you for joining us here on Buffalo Plus. We'll catch you next time.